Could we please invite pre-K and community schools to the witness table? Okay. To write other people, but this is my book, right? Yeah, I can write in my book. Okay, good afternoon. You can please go from the right to the left, from the left to the right, whatever is your pleasure. Or Mr. Secretary, you can start.
Yes. Good afternoon, Councilwoman.
State your name for the record.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Councilwoman and members of City Council. I am Otis Hackney, Chief Education Officer. Joining me today are Julie Beeman to my right, Director of PHL Pre-K, and Susan Gabreski, Director of Community Schools to my left. I am pleased to provide testimony on the Mayor's Office of Education Fiscal Year 2019 operating budget, but I would like to provide a shortened version with your permission. The mission of the Mayor's Office of Education is to provide leadership to improve education in the City of Philadelphia. MOE creates policies and programs to expand access to quality pre-K for Philadelphia families, support the creation of community schools, which removes barriers to student success, facilitate collaboration and partnership among stakeholders, and advance educational policy. Our work is funded through the Philadelphia Beverage Tax, which was implemented in 2017. Looking ahead and using funding made possible by the Philadelphia Beverage Tax, we are working to fulfill our mission of implementing several programs. The first program is Policy, Programs, and Public Engagement, or PPPE for short. PPPE staff operate with diverse external stakeholders to develop policy and programs that strengthen local schools and support educational initiatives across the city. PPPE centralizes communications, finance, and policy for our department's initiatives, and staff connect constituents to citywide educational resources. Through the PHL Pre-K program, the administration is committed to providing free quality pre-K for up to 5,500 3- and 4-year-olds annually by fiscal year 23. The overarching goal of this program is to make quality pre-K accessible for families and improve school readiness for its participants. PHL Pre-K plans to increase the number of locally funded pre-K seats in neighborhoods that lack access to affordability. Quality options to 5,500 seats by fiscal year 23. The expansion, however, will depend on the outcome of the litigation challenging the Philadelphia Beverage Tax, which funds the program. While litigation is ongoing, full expansion of the program will not be possible, and MOE will hold the number of seats steady at 2,000. If the litigation is resolved in the city's favor, MOE will begin to expand the program with 3,000 seats in fiscal year 20, 4,000 seats in fiscal year 21, 5,000 seats in fiscal year 22, and 5,500 seats in fiscal year 23. During fiscal year 2019, MOE will continue to contract with Philadelphia Health Management Corporation and partner with Urban Affairs Coalition, the School District of Philadelphia, and the District 1199C Training and Upgrading Fund to deliver quality pre-K to 2,000 students at up to 86 sites throughout the city. We will continue to recruit families with the greatest need of city-funded pre-K. Presently, 81% of PHL pre-K students reside in households at or below 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, which equated to $40,840 for a family of 3 in 2017. To ensure there are enough qualified early childhood education professionals available to meet the workforce demand created by PHL Pre-K, MOE will connect current and prospective PHL Pre-K teachers and staff to scholarships, apprenticeships, and other continuing education opportunities. We will deliver technical assistance and capacity building supports to PHL Pre-K providers, including but not limited to instructional coaching, curricular training, classroom supplies, and small business coaching. To date, 22 PHL PreK growth providers have earned a Keystone Star of 3 or 4 quality designation because of PHL PreK investment. MOE will continue to support the remaining 17 growth providers who are striving for Star 3 status. Finally, we are committed to continuous improvement, We will continue a 3-year program evaluation conducted by the National Institute for Early Education Research. Through the Community Schools program, we are committed to creating 20 community schools by FY23. Community schools are traditional district-run schools where there is a strategic coordinated plan that aligns services from the city and community service providers. These services are aligned to address the needs that children have through health access, social and emotional supports, and expanded learning opportunities. Community schools also strengthen neighborhoods by improving access to program and services for children, families, and residents of Philadelphia. This effort is a collaboration between the city and the School District of Philadelphia. For the Community Schools Initiative, expansion will also continue over the next 5 years with 20 community schools in place by fiscal year 2023. While litigation is ongoing, full expansion of the program will not be possible, and the city will hold the number of community schools at 12. If the litigation is resolved in the city's favor, MOE will expand the program with 14 community schools in fiscal year 20, 16 community schools in fiscal year 21, 18 community schools in fiscal year 22, and 20 community schools in fiscal year 23. During fiscal year 2019, community schools will continue to operationalize site-specific plans for each community school. We will expand services and programming that address the targeted needs of each community and continue to strengthen family and community engagement to increase program participation. Through collaboration with other city departments, the school district, and community partners, community schools will implement strategies to support the entire system of community schools. For example, the Office of Adult Education is working in each community school to provide adult basic education, GED preparation, and English as a second language classes. And this partnership is on track to grow next year. We also work extensively with the Department of Public Health to review access to health services in schools and to connect families to health insurance, as well as asthma, vision, and dental care. We're collaborating on a pilot in North Philadelphia's Health Enterprise Zone, where community health connectors work with community school coordinators and the school nurse to improve access to health resources for families. We are also collaborating with the city's out-of-school time initiative and Philadelphia Parks and Recreation to increase after-school programming and summer school opportunities for youth. Summer work opportunities, opportunities for youth. Community schools also contracted with a research firm to conduct a process and impact evaluation. The consultant will evaluate the quality of community school implementation, measure interim outcomes, including participation and satisfaction with services, and create the foundation for tracking long-term impact. Over the next 18 months, our department programs have made a difference in the lives of children and families in the city of Philadelphia. I appreciate this opportunity to provide testimony regarding the Mayor's Office of Education proposed fiscal year 2019 operating budget, and thank you for your continued support in our work. I and my team, we are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you very, very much. You've been busy.
A little bit, thank you.
Just introduce the members of your team, and then we'll open it up to questions from my colleagues.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Beeman. I'm the director of the PHL PreK program.
And how long have you been in that post?
Since August of 2017.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Susan Gobreski, the director of the Community Schools program.
Okay, and you've been in that place of responsibility for?
Since February of 2016.
Okay. I have a host of questions here, but I'm going to punt the ball to Councilman Taltenberger.
Madam Chair, thank you very, very much. Obviously, you're in front of a body that likes to measure things. We constantly are measuring, seeing if it's working. Is there information on measuring return on investment for community schools?
Yeah, there's actually some existing information out there in the work. We've actually engaged, we contracted with a provider to creating a return on investment tool for us that we will use to track return on investment. They've actually done a survey of academic literature and findings from other places around the country to help start looking at what other places are finding from the social return on investment, creating a tool for us and working with us so that we can measure our return on investment here.
And that's been tested by other municipalities, other
Yeah,
jurisdictions?
Yeah, there's some information available. One of the places came out and said for $1 invested in community schools, you can get something like an $8 to $10 return on investment, but that obviously varies based on what kinds of programs you're running. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to create a tool. And it's Thomas Miller and Associates.
Try to talk into the mic, and if you could slow down just a bit, because we know that it takes the brain a minute to catch up with what's happening verbally.
Sure.
Okay?
It was given by Mr. Hackney that right now we have 12 community schools, is that correct?
Yes.
Community schools. And you also gave, some might say it's an aggressive, once the soda tax matters are resolved in the judicial realm. Some might say it's modest, others may say it's rather aggressive. Just correct me if I'm wrong, by the year 2023 or budget year 2023, we may have up to 23 schools, is that correct? Or am I incorrect?
No, we would have 20.
20, okay.
Yes.
All right. The question is that I have, is there interest from other schools becoming community schools at this point? And how would that work?
In the first 2 rounds of applications, we've actually had over 60 schools apply for the 12 slots that we had. Are
there any charter schools in that, or are they all public?
So the program is initially focused on district-run schools. Okay. And so we've had over 60 schools apply for the 12 spots. Was there another part of your question?
No, I just wanted that actually explains it. And then out of the 60. At some point, if funding permits and the court decisions go the right way, we could find ourselves with 20. Is that correct? 2023.
Correct.
That is at least the plan. And I would think with 60 being in, you wouldn't be taking any more applications at this point because...
Actually, we open an application process each year, and we will do so again as soon as the beverage tax litigation is resolved. So we want to make sure that each year there's an opportunity for schools to apply.
So each year all right, so once you apply, must you then reapply the following year?
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, but they can be a modified application.
Gotcha. Yeah, I understand. Okay. You mentioned working with other city agencies and other departments that have or may want to get involved. How's that continuing?
Okay. We actually meet regularly with many departments. Otis referenced the Office of Adult Education. So we collaborate with them to look at what programs are being offered by the city. One of our stated goals is to help expand the reach of the programs that the city is already running to improve access. So we want to get, so we're offering adult education classes in schools now. We're working with the Office of Arts and Culture to offer cultural events. We work regularly with the Department of Health on everything from looking at physical health services and mental health services to providing programs that improve access to benefits.
With mental health, and that's being more and more in the news, and someone's identified that they need increased services. At this moment of the 12, are those services available for that young person if necessary?
So, yeah, what we've been doing is working with DBHIDS to look at what's being offered and working with the school district to look at what programs are being offered and identify specific areas of need in that. As you know, you can't just walk in and say, here, we're going to offer all that, right? So we've started to look at how we can align community programming to existing clinical services. What are the opportunities to expand clinical services, working with other departments and the district to do that? And then what kind of community programs can support that? So things like stress workshops and mental health workshops, forums to help people understand what resources are available, helping people access insurance.
Is that for both the student and the parent or the guardians, or is that more for the guardians?
For all, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. Madam Chair, thank you.
You're very welcome, colleague. So clarity, there are 12 fully functioning community schools. Hello?
Yes.
Okay. And so if one citizen resident walked in from their house to the community school, they would see a menu of services offered by DBH or DHS, or how is it? Because working with is too nebulous. It doesn't get to what that looks like.
That is true. It can sometimes, the process for creating a community schools really are a strategy, not a model. It starts with doing a community-specific needs assessment and looking at the data, and then working with community stakeholders. We have a very detailed process to create a stakeholder-based approach to identifying priorities for each school. So every school doesn't actually offer the same things.
Okay.
So part of what we've been doing is making sure we're bringing in parents and community organizations to talk about what the school community needs in particular.
Okay.
And so when people walk in, what we're working to do is, and it takes a while to ramp up, these things, you have to focus on both participation as well as the program offering. So we're working to make sure that we're helping to support the utilization of programs that get offered. So someone would walk in, and some of the programs might be obvious. We have advertised community events where there are workshops, or working with cooking classes, or stress workshops, or working with health insurance navigators. And then sometimes a parent would walk in and potentially inquire and meet with our community school coordinator.
Okay.
And they might refer them or refer to our office so we can connect them with a city department or a community provider. So it's a combination of regular program offerings and then a connective type of work.
And so have all of those 12 gotten past that initial stage of needs assessment?
Yes, the second cohort just completed their needs assessment and priority setting process. So it's a two-phase process, and then you start on implementation. So the second cohort is now starting on early implementation. The first cohort has moved forward from that.
Okay. Mr. Secretary, you should know that when the PreK experience started, I actually assigned one of my staffers to visit 16 of the PreK providers to gain some insight both on the successes and the challenges. And so with her feedback to us during staff meetings, speak to how far the Mayor's Office of Education has come with its link to PHMC, UAC, in assisting PreK providers around the issue in particular of health benefits for its teachers and staff.
Good morning. Good afternoon, I'm sorry. I've been here since the morning. The Urban Affairs Coalition, which is one of our partners that administers the work of PreK, provides business and technical assistance to all of our providers, which does include connecting them to resources that could help providers to access health benefits for themselves and for their staff.
So, okay, but what does that look like? They've been connected. Can you now say that because of that relationship, PreK employers now have health benefits? Because what does that relationship in a tangible way, what's the yield? Because, partnerships are great, relationships are great. Our question becomes, what is the yield and bottom line of that interface?
Yes, so we made the connection with the partnership. We don't have the specific data about the yield or the results, but we can certainly get that information and provide that to you.
We'd be interested in knowing how many of those child care providers, PreK providers, that are now a part of the mayor's initiative, how many of them might have health benefits because of the relationship with PHMC and UAC. You follow me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. All right then. Can we please ask Councilman Green questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. These are kind of a continuation of questions I asked earlier in reference to the funding, and this pertains to the soda tax or sugar sweetened beverage tax, which was used as funding for the PreK initiative. Do you believe the public at large have an understanding of what the proceeds of the sugar sweetened beverage tax were used for?
Do we think that the public understands what the proceeds are supporting? That's your question?
Yes.
I believe so. We do extensive work in marketing, at least engaging parents to sign up for the program. So our primary focus in terms of when we think about the engagement strategy is identifying those parents of 3 and 4 year olds that would qualify for the program and really making sure that they're aware of the opportunity that the beverage tax is provided through PHL PreK, to the point that our enrollment, I think we were fully enrolled by August this year for this rollout because of the level of engagement. So people are aware of the programs and looking for us to actually do more, and we're hoping to be able to do so in the near future.
And I would agree with you in reference to the enrollment numbers. Those who are looking for this type of education opportunity for their children are aware of the enrollment period, from my understanding, based on the numbers of enrollment, especially from your marketing and outreach in, I think, the latter part of the year and up into the early part of the year. However, that's just the population of those who have children that would benefit from PreK. And even in that population, although they're receiving information regarding the initiative, I don't get a sense, because the focus has been more so here, if you have a child of a certain age, we have certain opportunities for your children in reference to how they can be enrolled in the PreK initiative. But I think if you were to do a deeper dive with that same segment of those who have an understanding of the opportunity, they probably do not have a real strong grasp on where the funding came from for the initiative. And I think the concern I have, and this goes back to my point in reference to the school district, is that people at large, because I hear it all the time, don't have a sense of where the dollars for the sugar and sweetened beverage tax went. They just hear education and tax, and they just think it went to the school district. So as we're having this conversation in reference to funding for the school district, I think it's going to be incumbent upon the administration to let people know where the dollar, basically all of the source of funds for education, and why there's a request now regarding local control for dollars for the school district, and how that's different than the sugar sweetened beverage tax. Because you ask a number of people, and I'll venture, even if you did some polling of people who are beneficiaries of the PreK initiative, they probably do not have a strong grasp on the fact that the sugar and sweetened beverage tax went to the PreK initiative.
Actually, I appreciate that feedback, and so we'll take that back and see what we can do in terms of...
I think just even internally, because you have a census, you have a population of people who are benefiting from the program, and I think if you just did some outreach within the parents, caregivers, guardians that are enrolling their children into the PreK initiative, just asking them what's the source of funding, they probably would not necessarily say soda tax. Now, some may, I'm not saying all, but I think that is an issue, and that goes into the larger question of people not really having an understanding of where the dollars are going. They just hear tax, education, and things going to school district, and don't know what they're getting for what they're paying for. And so going through this process of budget hearings and asking for additional resources for the school district, when people don't have a real transparent way of where the dollars are going, is a concern. And I don't think, as I said earlier, it's an urgency from the school district perspective in reference to letting people really know where these dollars are going, because they just hear tax, money, education, and are not differentiating between, okay, we had to do a liquor but I drink tax, we did a 1% sales tax, and really don't understand why we've had to do those things. There's not a lot of information regarding William Penn et al. Versus the Pennsylvania Department of Education lawsuit, that because of the getting rid of charter school reimbursement and the pension costs, these are issues that we have that we're trying to fund. I think there really needs to be a real education about all of these issues, because I have a concern without that, it's going to be a challenge.
Thank you. That is something that I know that we will look into and see and explore how we can address getting that clarity out. I know that there was for a time, especially when they were having the commercials that ran a few months ago about the beverage tax and how it was supporting children in pre-K. How do we get more of that word out so that way people understand that? And I understand the new environment that we're in now, because people will conflate that initiative with the new proposal that the mayor put forward for education. So that's something that we'll look into and see how we can get that messaging a little more clear.
I know my bell's wrong, but those were commercials done by an outside entity
right, I
that had
understand.
a specific interest to try to counter some other interests that did not like the sugar and sweetened beverage tax. So that wasn't directly tied or coming from the administration. That was an organization connected with former Mayor Bloomberg that supported
Understood.
this concept. So I think having some type of internal assessment of the caregivers and beneficiaries of pre-K and just getting a perspective where they are would be helpful, especially as we debate this issue going forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Councilman Squilla?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some community schools in my district, and know that it's still a work in progress, and not every school was treated the same way. Do we, knowing we're still waiting for the sugar tax lawsuit to work its way through the courts, is there going to be a way of knowing what other schools would be interested in community schools? I know people do submit those applications. Are you now going through them and then prioritizing?
Yes, and I would say, for a point of clarity, I would say that our community schools are treated all the same way, but we provide different services. All the schools have access to the same level of supports, coordinators, but then we try to tailor those specific services to that specific school. I think, Susan, do you want to answer take the second part of that?
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, there's a good amount of interest that we've identified. We are contacted. We are waiting to take on the next application process. We want to make sure that there continue to be opportunities for schools that are interested to engage, which is one of the reasons that we open up the process each year, as opposed to creating a running list. And you also want to respond to things like if a principal retires, or you want to make sure that you're taking the school where it's at the time. So that's why we do the application process annually, and we are doing outreach and working with schools to make sure that they understand what's involved in the community school opportunity, and looking at how we can support more schools as they start to adopt some of these strategies, even though there's a lot that goes into getting a school up to a level of quality that actually can get the results.
But there are schools that are considering this, and you guys are working with them to see if the next steps to move forward. Is there information on like measuring return of investment to the community schools?
Can you repeat your question, please, colleague?
Is there information on measuring the return of investment?
We have some information from other places, and we actually engaged a contractor to develop a return on investment tool for us so that we can measure return on investment here. So we're developing a tool to be able to do that, and we're looking at what other places around the country have done to measure that and look at where the greatest opportunity for impact and ROI are.
And then, I mean, that question, if you think, because people are saying, all right, we're investing money in the schools, what are we getting out of it? So what is the return? And whether it's not monetarily returned, but, what are the benefits being given to the surrounding community, the students, the parents, and whatnot. So I think it'd be good to be able to measure that moving forward, and it also gives the other schools, people who are considering being community schools, an opportunity to look at that. Lastly, it was, you mentioned that working with the city agencies, that there are other departments that you work with internally. Did you list a number of departments, and is there other agencies that we're looking to work with within the community schools?
I listed, I think, a few: the Office of Adult Education, working with the Office of Arts and Culture, Creative Economy. We work regularly with Health Department, collaborate with DBH IDS. There's actually, we're working with the Office of Sustainability to help look at the heat stress around the city. We actually developed a stress index to help look at factors that are affecting communities, and now have incorporated the Office of Sustainability's heat stress. We look at things like food access. So we work with as many departments as we can. We've sat down with planning to really make sure that we're thinking about what the opportunity of community schools really is to extend the city services, and to reach more children, families, and community members.
And are we also doing a survey from the community schools or surrounding communities looking at the ones that we're in now and how they feel it is benefiting them, or what changes could be made?
So we actually have also engaged an evaluator, an independent evaluator, and so it's Research for Action is conducting an evaluation. The early response is going to focus on participation and satisfaction. So what does that reach look like, and do people feel like the school is making progress in the areas that have been identified? And community members are included, as well as partner organizations, parents, and educators, and students when possible. So we are looking, that's the early sign of success, is participation and satisfaction, and then there are medium-term outcomes and longer-term outcomes.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. We'll certainly circle back. Councilman Dom?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good afternoon. I guess this is a general question. What kind of dollars do you think we can expect, if you have any idea, from the state for the funding of the schools? Do you have any idea what we might expect?
What we're expecting in terms of dollars from the state is what has been included in the governor's budget proposal that he has submitted.
How much is that?
I don't have that number in front of me. I don't have that number in front of me, but we can get that to you.
Okay. And then I have another couple other questions for you. We're talking, I think a lot of us are talking about accountability. I know I heard Councilwoman Sanchez and Councilman Squilla and myself earlier, and I think Councilman Green talk about accountability. And this investment we're making in the schools, which is a good investment, how do we measure the investment? Is it through graduation rates increasing, and are there certain specific graduation rates we can set goals for 5 years from now? Are there certain college degrees we can hope our graduates attain? Are there certain average income or salaries that we hope to? So we set the goals, and then we make the investment, and we try to reach those goals. Are those goals in place 5 years from now you could share with us?
So the goals, can goals be set? I would say yes, but that would take a lot of input from the school district to make that determination. When you think about what those goals can and should be, and also when you think about how schools are funded across the city. So even when we look at graduation rates and we talk about holding the school district accountable, it actually goes across sectors, because resources go through the school district, also support not only district schools, but charter schools. So if we're looking at citywide graduation rates, I think that's a number that we would also explore, not just the school district of Philadelphia, because that money does go to charter schools as well. Looking at improvements in terms of test scores, literacy rates, those are things that I think that are pretty standard for them to look at. And so looking at those baselines, or even going 3 years, prior to right now, and seeing and looking at the progress that the district or in education sector has made, and then tie that into any additional investment to say, okay, what should we look forward and what are reasonable. I think if you look at Dr. Height's Action Plan 3.0, he outlines a few goals that he has moving forward. So I think that should be the standard that we look at for the school district, and then also looking at other schools within the sector and holding them accountable as well with the additional investment from the city.
I'll tell you what would be helpful for me, and maybe my colleagues too, a one-page summary that says, for this investment, these are the goals we hope to achieve in the next 5 years. And then if we could get that to us, I think it'll be, so we can see what it is, so we can hold people accountable, because that's the issue here, accountability. We can keep putting money in, but if we don't see the results, why are we doing it? So we want to do it, and we want to see the results.
Right.
Thank you. And I have another question, and this is a minor one. In the pre-K programs, I've visited now 52 schools in 2 years and a few months. And I will say most of the schools I visited are doing a very good job of teaching. Principals are great. I'm convinced it's all about the principal. That's the key person in the whole program. And I know that the Neubauers are doing a great job training principals. It's phenomenal. But having said that, I noticed one teacher, I don't remember the school, in kindergarten, she was teaching technology to the kindergarten kids, which was amazing to me. And she had a Codapillar, okay? A $30 toy called a Codapillar, where these kids were learning how to code in kindergarten. So my question is, in pre-K and kindergarten, is that something, that was the only school, by the way, the only teacher I saw teaching that. Is that something we can take across the board, especially on all these pre-K kids, and get them on track with technology early in the game?
I would say for any initiative, it's possible, but in terms of, it requires a high level of investment. So if that teacher has a background or has taken additional professional development courses in being able to implement those strategies with students, that is easy for one teacher to do. To get all teachers across the board to do that, it's just like with, I think the district right now, in partnership with Read by Fourth, there are a ton of instructional strategies that almost most K through 3 teachers across the district have participated in, and you're starting to see, you know, the results of that concentrated effort around literacy. So it would just have to be part of a broader initiative. So in theory, what you're asking, is it possible, but it would take a seriously heavy lift to get everybody there.
Well, let me say this about that, because I went and looked it up online. And I bought 5 of them, because I'm going to give them out to the next kindergarten classes I go to. They're $35 each, okay? $35. So I can't imagine it's that hard for a teacher to learn how to use these things. I'm happy, by the way, to buy them for every kindergarten class for $35, because we'll set them on the right path, even pre-K. So I don't think it's as big as we think it is. I really don't. And this teacher was, 35 kids were, or 30 kids were like engaged in how this was being taught in kindergarten. I just think it's the right path. So can I have one more question? Is that okay? The other 2 things I want to just bring up is I want to make sure that we're teaching in pre-K.
Councilman Dom, so you're going to force me to put my principal hat on.
All right, go ahead. That's good.
You said 1, then you said 2, so you have to pick one or the other.
I'll come back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dom. Councilwoman Blackwell stepped away, so Councilwoman Sanchez?
Thank you. Good afternoon, I guess. Real quickly, Otis, as a former principal, with this school district coming back to local control, do you think that it is a fair request of us to ask of the new board and the administration for a student-weighted formula?
In terms of, and you're asking me as a former principal, and knowing the type
And
of...
the Secretary of Education,
Right.
who's supposed to be our policy arm. So do you
Yes.
think it's fair for that to be a goal of the new locally controlled school district?
I would think that how the district does the funding right now in terms of making sure that students have the resources and looking at what dollars come in, whether it be from the local, state, or federal level, and trying to align those dollars. I know the district does a lot of work with trying to make sure that Title I dollars go to where they need to in terms of students with
But we don't have equity.
So I think that if that should be a goal, I would want to talk to the district to see where they would want to be on that.
I'm asking you as a policy person. You're the Secretary of Education. Should we have a student-weighted formula as part of a goal for local control and an infusion of money? That's it. Yes or no?
I wouldn't put that up. I would not put that up front in terms of the what we need to do right now in terms of thinking about what's required for this transition and getting and putting the stabilizing the funding for the district moving forward. I think that's something that we should explore.
If you keep stabilizing the formula the way we're going, again, we're going to have very well-funded schools, some schools that are poor that get some money and become better, and then a bunch of schools that just will never meet par. So I'm just saying, at what point do we ask the state for equity and student formula, but we're not willing to do it locally? So that's a policy discussion. I'll move on to the other stuff. I just think at some point we got to talk about that. Let's not ask people to do what we're not willing to do ourselves. I think this is the perfect opportunity of a perfect storm, local control. There's going to be an infusion of money. We should have a student-weighted formula. You either agree with it or you don't. Real simple. Real quick. As it relates to the implementation of pre-K, because I had an opportunity to meet with with Ms. Goreski before. What are the matrix that you're using for short-term and long-term success? And can that be shared with us? And if we haven't, just share it. I mean, do we have it?
We're still in the process of developing the matrices for long-term success, and we're working with the school district to be able to align our goals with them. So we don't have, and also working with Read by Fourth, as they're also doing a lot of work towards ensuring that.
So will we have something at what and when?
We should be able to have something in terms of implementation and really fleshing out those matrices once the lawsuit is resolved and we're able to see
Why
where
are we
we're
waiting
able
for
to
the
go.
lawsuit to do for stuff that we got to do whether we have money or we don't? Whether we have a lawsuit with money or we don't, we're committed to the program. Setting up matrix is setting up matrix. I mean, we need a formula for that. It'd be nice that before the budget process ends that we have some idea about that. And what that looks like, even if it's just short-term with some revisions, long-term of what we're looking to do. All of us know that, high-quality pre-K program, full-time, is really about $13,000 to $15,000 a year. I think, again, the mayor and the administration are committed to this. We have $20 million for 2,000 slots that are the equivalent of $10,000 a slot, and we're funding them at $8,500. So I think that one of the things I'd like to see is the decision to fund at $8,500 means we're only doing 5.5 hours and not summer. I'd like to see, as we move forward into the implementation, is how are parents filling the gap? No one works for 5.5 hours. So how are parents filling in those gaps, which means parents are paying, right? And then in the summer, so that as we look to institutionalize this long term, we are more adequately integrating some of the program stuff, right? So you have a DHS child, that maybe needs infusion of money. So how are we going to align this with everything else that we're doing? And then how are we using the other $1,500?
The other $1,500 goes towards the administrative costs, and we are encouraging all of our families to apply for CCIS funding because that does fill in the gap for the before.
So do we know that? Do we track? Because we know 30% of the people that have these slots could pay, and were paying before. So for that 70% that weren't paying before and are not paying now, do we have an idea? Is that part of our matrix about how we're making families whole so they can get to work? And
that's something that we can get for you. We do track just in general income levels for our families, so we do have basic information on that.
so our providers are not required to tell us how the parent, we recommend that they apply for CSSI. How do providers track? And the reason I say this, to their credit, some of our providers have been incredibly creative in how they keep a child all day. And we appreciate that. But again, when you're going to institutionalize a new program, is that an important matrix? And how do we get to a place where we know that so we could be more helpful, particularly for summer programming, right?
That's good.
Yeah. Yes, and we do, that is part of their requirement that they do refer eligible families to CCIS.
But we're not tracking that.
We're not tracking the families, that's correct.
And we're not asking our providers to do so either.
We're asking our providers to make the referral and to keep track of the referrals of the children that they've referred to CCIS.
I'd like to be able to see, and I'm sure my colleagues, district by district, would like to be, I want to know how my parents are making out, right? I want to know that if a quality provider is far and there's transportation costs involved in it, all of the factors that we all know impact attendance, participation, and their ability to get a job. Because this is also kind of a jobs program, right? And I think it should be included as you're developing some short-term matrix. We should be able to have a profile of who's benefiting, right? And then what are some of the challenges in the gaps that we can help support. And Madam Chairwoman, my bell has rung. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. We're up here negotiating what's best to do, given that the stenographer, like the rest of us, needs a break. And so I think we've decided that we're going to now, we have 3 more members on this round, so the ruling is we're going to have to do the half hour, break now, come back and finish up with this round, and then immediately go into the MDO's office by 2 o'clock.
Okay.
All right, so we need you to come back. We need our stenographer to take a break, and I need my other colleagues to please return 2 o'clock.
Pre-K and community schools. We'll get started because we are running way behind. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon again. Otis Hackney, Chief Education Officer, City of Philadelphia.
Susan Gobreski, Director of Community Schools, Mayor's Office of Education.
You can proceed with your testimony.
Now, I read
They had started already.
Yes.
I'm
So
sorry,
just
I'm
questions.
out of the loop. I'm out of the loop. That's what happens when you walk away. Councilman Jones.
So because you have a flight to catch, I'm gonna
Thank you.
be short and brief and stuff like that. First, let me thank you and what you guys have done for pre-K. Literally, my grandbabies did not have room in pre-K pre-soda tax. And this is a part of the messaging that we have to put out there. My daughter is a fair living, middle income, but she would not have been able to work but for the fact that now she can do pre-K. And I'm thankful. I didn't pull a string. Y'all can go check, but the availability of seats makes the difference in their outcomes. So thank you for that. On the community schools portion, real quick, I understand it's new.
Thank you.
But there are 3 things that you should take away. We need tangible measurements as to a test group that does not get these kinds of services as opposed to a test group that receives it, so that we can then justify, memorialize, and commit to greater funding to this area. That's number 1. Number 2, on community schools, I need to ask you, do you have a good working relationship, fair working relationship with the school district? There seems to be somewhat of a disconnect by way of that. And how do we bridge that gap? Because some of the places that you fought very hard to get community schools in, and which I'm appreciative for, aren't my ground zeros. They're not the places where every 28 days there's going to be gunfire. It's not the places where the unemployment rate is the highest. Every statistical maps and what Blondell Reynolds Brown showed me was how these things overlay, like violence, hypertension, organ failure, dropout rates, poverty, all in the same catchment area. So if there is Strawberry Mansion, those kinds of ground zeros are the place that are needed. And what I found it to be true, because it's not your fault, is some of the principals are so concerned with climate and fighting the fight to try to keep young people from hurting each other that they can't take the time or the resources out to complete and then follow through on some of the opportunities. So I don't know what to say altogether how we address that, but I know 2 schools in my mind that they are poster childs for community schools, because for teachers to have to raise money to buy shoes and sneakers for students in order for rainy days them to come to school, poster child. For schools to have to close down because students had bed bugs and brought it to school because they could not afford exterminators. is a poster child. So how do we take a deeper dive into need-based as opposed to folk who, the rich get richer almost?
So in terms of how we identify schools, I mean, I think we all know where the data is that can identify certain zip codes, like from a zip code down to almost down to a block of, where's the highest need. The way we go about identifying community schools is that they basically have to self-apply. And I will tell you, and I know people reference like Otis as a former principal, but I can say as a former principal that building leadership matters in terms of that's a key indicator to that school's readiness. So for a principal walking into a brand new situation, it may be very challenging. Taking on a community school might be a bit much to do at the beginning versus someone that's a little more established, has established some partnerships and has a better handle, because it is a partnership that needs to be managed, but in a good way. I often say to my team internally, if our community schools are doing things really well, that should be one less thing for a principal to do, not one more. And so we know where those schools are, so we'll continue to do outreach. We do work well with the district, and so when we're ready to hit go on the next round, we do a good level of engagement in partnership with the district to reach out to principals, to answer questions, to set the table for what their mindset should be, what a community school could look like, and then for them to identify what their community school could look like, and then going through that application process. Then they would figure out how we can do it. But our goal is to get to 20. And we know even with 20 that there will be some others that we would love to see involved. But we have to start there, build the systems, establish the schools, and then look to add in more schools.
I'm done. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Blackwell is not here. I'm sorry, Councilman Greenlee.
Very quickly, Councilman Dom had to leave. I promised I would mention this to you. His favorite subject of earned income tax credit. He wants to make sure that that it's distributed to all the pre-K programs and community schools. And okay.
Our community school coordinators and our program staff are working on programs to get that out. We share that goal.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appears to be no additional questions for these witnesses. Thank you very much. See you later.
Thank you.